there's this good article that was written in the last week or so by Ryan Grimm of The Intercept titled Elephant in the Zoom: How Meltdowns Have Brought Progressive Advocacy Groups to a Standstill at a Critical Moment in World History. It's a very long article, and there's a lot of anecdotes, but it's definitely worth reading, I think, because the anecdotes actually do help kind of paint the picture that he's creating for us. Because it's a real problem that he's addressing, which is primarily the fact that, as many of you who are watching this probably know, within organizations, activist groups, but also NGO groups, groups that have some attachment to activism, but maybe aren't the same. It's not just a DSA problem. It's Planned Parenthood. It's Greenpeace. It's the Sierra Group. It's all these like progressive social advocacy groups or activist groups that over the last few years have increasingly been mired in internal criticism, internal reforms of trying to reform office culture, including greater diversity training, etc. And it's become a problem because, as the article outlines, more and more of the groups are spending their actual time and energy focusing on these internal reforms rather than actually doing anything. Like that they're not, this is a point that Ryan makes a few times in the article, that there's a Democrat in the White House, there's a Democratic legislature, and so there's limitations, but there's real opportunities, and it seems like these groups are spending most of their time, instead of pushing for their stated objectives and goals, trying to, create the workplace that they want. And so there's, I think, an interesting tension there, where on the one, there's obvious, I think we can identify some pretty obvious issues. And on the other hand, there's the case against it would be, well, we need better office cultures. The office culture is pretty bad generally when it's dictated by managers and by bosses. And that this is like an uprising from below of people saying we need to reform office culture so that it's more anti-racist, it's more inclusive, etc. There's that case, but Jen, what was your reaction to this article and broadly this phenomena that we've thought about and talked about quite a bit?
Right. So first, I just want to echo your thoughts that I thought it was a really good article. I encourage everybody to check it out. If you have spent time in progressive nonprofit spaces or, in kind of like activist groups, I think a lot of this will ring very familiar. Now, that said, I do want to say, although I really liked the article and I thought it was very well reported, something I was thinking about is I almost feel like the article represents the problem as one of like woke staffers terrorizing kind of like befuddled and maybe more centrist upper management who, want to do the work, but now they have to confront like all of these internal call outs and, crazy like Slack and Zoom confrontations and all of that. And I don't doubt that that is actually happening to some degree at the organizations that Ryan Grimm profiles. But as someone who has worked in, progressive nonprofits, including at a lot of very, very bad organizations with like completely deranged social justice cultures, I want to say that it goes both ways. It's not woke staffers, at least in my experience, it's not just woke staffers terrorizing, more reasonable managers. It's woke staffers and woke managers. And I'll just give a very brief kind of example or anecdote. I once worked very briefly at a progressive nonprofit, which of course I won't name, where, this kind of like social justice, emotional terrorism, I guess you could call it, really did cut both ways, right? So one example is there was a white staffer at this organization that felt that she was being mistreated by her supervisor, who was a Black man, and so took the complaint to upper management. And one of the, executive directors told this staff, one of the executive directors, who was herself Black, told this staffer, you just don't understand how Black people talk. So like that was her way of kind of using like the language of social justice or, like racial awareness or whatever to write off what seemed like a staffer's legitimate workplace concern, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that said, this definitely went the other way as well, where the staffers at this organization were obviously, I think that there were legitimate workplace concerns, legitimate labor concerns. After all, nonprofits tend to they run on shoestring budgets. Even if they have a lot of money, they tend to work their staffers very hard. I think something that Ryan Grimm's article points out is, oftentimes the language of like, we're doing this for the movement is
Mm-hmm.
used to kind of try to push some of the legitimate workplace concerns about long hours or abusive bosses or whatever under the table, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like those are all very real concerns. What I noticed at this place that I worked at was the staffers, because they were kind of beholden to woke language and sort of social justice culture, they wanted to funnel all of their workplace concerns into kind of the framework of racial justice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which Ryan Grimm's article again points out like a lot of staffers are sort of prone at these places are sort of prone to do. So what ended up happening was I guess I'll just say, to wrap up my kind of long-winded remarks, like part of the reason why I'm so skeptical of these kinds of social justice cultures and like and trying to funnel everything into the framework of racial justice or racial awareness is because I think it produces bad solutions. So
Mm-hmm.
at this place that I worked at, like I said, there were plenty of legitimate workplace concerns about long hours, abusive bosses, just being treated unfairly, so on and so forth. And the way that these staffers talked about it is they made it about racism. So they were like, this organization has a race problem. It can't hold on to Black staffers. We've gone through this many Black staffers over the last year. The turnover rate among Black staffers is really, really high. Now that was true. The turnover rate was really high in general, but do you see what I'm saying? Like they kind
Right.
of made it into this issue of like the organization can't hold on to Black people. And again, while there may have been a sort of kernel of truth to that assessment, what ended up happening is they were like, okay, so what should we do about this? We need a chief of diversity. So they basically, by sort of pushing these general workplace concerns into the framework of racial justice, the solution that they came up with was a new manager. And, I mean, this is like a little bit of a tangent. My main point was that I think, although I really liked the Ryan Grimm article, that kind of like social justice, like culture, like emotional blackmail, I think really does cut both ways, and managers do it too.
Right. Well, I think that's a bit part of it's also, I think like it's a really useful tangent because it's middle class people creating middle class solutions
Mm.
to their problems. And part of the problem, like in Grimm, I think kind of doesn't address this nearly enough actually. But part of the his subheader of this critical moment in world history is the fact that all of these issues that deal with like progressive social justice, that like actually bettering people's lives and creating a better society, are currently in the hands of middle class people that are
Right.
in these NGO structures that have institutional logics that have to, they're dependent on fundraising from donors and whatever. There's that side of it, but it's both an institutional factor and then
Hmm.
also the individuals that make up this that are themselves middle class. That when they come to these problems, they don't come to it, usually they don't come to it with like a material interest involved. That it's that their getting by in life is dependent on addressing these problems in the way that most workers have historically come to progressive political projects through unions, through labor parties, because they actually have an interest in advancing social justice in this way that is truly universal and progressive. And so I think these middle class people, it's largely for them, it's moral issues. It's they feel there's like they feel horrible that the world is falling apart. And I think kind of if if there's any like soul in you, like you feel that like the world is falling apart. But their politics are not based on solidarity. They're based on charity. They're based on donations. They're based on kind of this like weekend activism, email lists. It's like pieces that maybe fall into an actual political project that actually changes the world, but
Hmm.
it's like just the marginal stuff. It's like not the real kind of meat of what like progressive organizing looks like, or should be, or actually has worked in the past.
I'll
So
just add on to that. I think that, I think it's pretty clear that most of these sort of progressive NGOs, especially the higher up you go, do not have working class constituencies.
yeah,
And they may believe themselves, or they may actively want to act in the interest of the working class in many cases. But when I say constituency, I'm talking about the standard Adolf Reed definition of like a group of like actual people with names and addresses, right?
right.
And these NGOs, don't have that constituency at all. I mean, that's just, again, as you sort of alluded to, who are they beholden to? Obviously,
Right.
their donors and the foundations that fund them. So
Yeah, and a lot of it's that, and then it is like a lot of it's kind of the socialization of these individuals, where it is like just kind of
yeah.
narcissism. It's just
Right.
like
Well, when you say, okay, but when you say that, by virtue of being more middle class or like college educated or whatever, the people who staff these organizations from top to bottom aren't necessarily acting in their material interests. It's interesting because Ryan Grimm's article talks about how these staffers, sort of similar to the phenomenon that I was talking about earlier, like kind of blend larger social justice concerns with like their own workplace
right.
demands. Wouldn't you say that that is in a way acting in their interests?
Yeah, no, right. So I think, yeah, they're acting in their own material interests as middle class people, and then create middle class solutions to these
Right.
problems. Whereas the
Like
actual
more diversity managers or whatever.
Right. Whereas, like, yeah, where the actual, but the whole thing is that it never actually addresses the problem, because the middle class just is incapable of like solving the issues of capitalism and of, these large structural systemic issues. They largely just kind of make their place within the world a little bit cozier when they are successful. So that's I think like the material interests that bring people together around kind of universal systemic changes, that lies with like working people, where they don't want to be exploited, where they want certain aspects of life to be guaranteed, public goods, that democratic control and decision making. Whereas it's just kind of borne out in how middle class people actually pursue politics. They don't do that, but they're the ones who right now have a grip on these issues, and so we have to find a way to like either strip them of their control over these issues. These middle class people saying, this is what this is what climate action looks like. This is what reproductive rights looks like. This is what job rights on the job look like. And it has to be brought back to workers and to unions.
I agree with that broadly. I do have a few bones to pick about your overall comments on the middle class, but I realized you and I had like a long conversation about this, which is definitely on the YouTube channel already. So if you're watching, check that out. Oh yeah, we'll find a way to link that. Yeah,
it's right here on screen.
You can hear Cale and I talk about the middle class and their relationship to social change a little more. Well, Cale, do you have any last thoughts on the Ryan Grimm article?
No, it's good. You should read it.
Yeah. That's basically where I am as well. And I'll just say, like, I think that most people who are watching this channel like already know this, but if you are like a young leftist and you are looking to, I don't know, get involved in some kind of, movement work or whatever, please don't work at a progressive nonprofit. It's like I said, I mean, I'm sure plenty of people have good experiences, but they're notoriously horrible workplaces. I think as the article, shows, and as we've been talking about, like I think that they just produce like really like deranged and insane cultures, and you can do much better work elsewhere. So
yeah, don't make yourself more paranoid than you need to be.
Exactly. If you like this video from The Jacobin Show, please hit like and subscribe and share with your friends. Thanks.